Spring it on with 40 to 70% off almost everything at Gap Factory and GapFactory.com. Matching styles for the family are on sale too. Shop it all through April 12th.
This is Donald Parham of the LA Chargers, and you're listening to Chargers Unleashed, part of the LA Football Network. Stay jiggy.
Welcome to another episode of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LA Football Network. Today's show, of course, is being brought to you by UFC Fit in Temecula, Charger Bolt Family, Golden Road Brewery, and MyBookie. Dan, it wasn't pretty. It definitely took some extra effort. It was a gritty win, but a win nonetheless. The Chargers had to have it. This essentially was a must-win game that they had to have in order to stay in contention at the top of the AFC West. Shorthanded, especially on defense. Sometimes backs up against the wall, came down to the wire, but the Chargers were able to go on the road and secure a victory against the Philadelphia Eagles, 27-24. They are back in the win column after essentially 3 weeks of us having to live with losses. Even though there's only 2 games, that bye week really sucked, having to live with that extra week of a loss. So Chargers are back on top, 5-3, atop the AFC West division. Dan, your thoughts?
Oh, Jake, I feel great. This is wonderful. Happy Monday to you. Happy Monday or Tuesday, depending on when you're watching or listening to this, to all of our listeners and viewers worldwide. For folks who have not already subscribed to us on YouTube, you can find us on YouTube, as well as anywhere you can find podcasts. We're there. Jake, Chargers exercised some more demons. They took a 6+ minute drive to end the game, much like they did in Washington week 1. They went on the road in Philly, beat the Philadelphia Eagles, although there wasn't pretty, like you mentioned. Defense still needs some help. There's some issues. Special teams looks much better. Justin Herbert back to his MVP form. Keenan Allen back to being the Slayer. Left side of the offensive line looks pretty. And 4th and Staley is still in effect. I think it was 4 of them that happened this past game. Jake, look. For as much as we want to sit here and nitpick, which I'm sure we're going to do, Chargers just won a football game. Like, look around the NFL. The Jags just beat the Bills. Like, imagine the Bills fans right now. Like, the Cowboys just got railroaded. Like, it's hard to...
The Vikings almost beat the Baltimore Ravens.
It's hard to win in the NFL. I don't care who the opponent is. So a win's a win. You'll take it. Game balls, teams off till Wednesday. Life is good as a Chargers player and fan. Jake, I didn't get one single text message from you all game long.
No, and to be honest, I mean, I was actually watching the game with a neighbor of mine who just so happens to be a Philadelphia Eagles fan. And to be honest, we were both so humble with how his team is what it is and what they need. And I was humble, of course, being a lot more pessimistic, but also being able to correctly predict how the game was gonna go. And I was giving him more hope because every time that the Chargers would score, I say, dude, right now you have us exactly where you wanted us. The glory for the Chargers only lasts for so long. And sure enough, right when the Chargers would score, the Eagles would march right back down the field and match by putting another touchdown in the end zone. So no, I was preoccupied talking about, the poor years of the Chargers and where we've come from here, and talking about his 3 draft picks that he has in Philly for next year and what his team needs. So yeah, I was not, other than my fantasy football team, I was not preoccupied with texting Daiyan Wolkenstein this time, which, as he has stated many times, when he never receives a text from me, and normally it's a good thing.
Yes. At least it's a good thing for the Chargers. And man, look, there's a lot to go over today. Obviously, we're going to go into some reactions from the game, some of the biggest takeaways, storylines. We do, Jake, have a ton of voicemails from the Chargers Unleashed hotline that was lit up after the game on Sunday. We got a few today as well. Again, for folks who have not heard or called in, you can always call a hotline at 5651. Leave a voicemail and your reaction will be on an upcoming episode of Chargers Unleashed. So as we go through the segments, we will sprinkle in the voicemails. I believe we have 6, so we'll do it in pairs of 2. And we'll have 3 of those, and we'll have some fun. We'll get Jake's instant reactions because he has not heard a lick of these. So, Jake, biggest takeaways. We don't need to go through the recap. Everybody knows what happened. We all saw it. What are your biggest takeaways? Things that were most either impressive or things that were... Let's start with impressive first. Most impressive things about this game.
I think most notable, you got to look at Justin Herbert, number one. After the 2 games of struggles that he's had against Baltimore, New England, this felt like a game where he got himself right again. And talk about efficient. 32 of 38 for 356 yards, 3 total touchdowns. And according to ESPN stats, it was his 12th 300-yard game, which is 2 more than any quarterback through just 2 seasons in NFL history. The only other 2 to do that, Patrick Mahomes and Dan Marino. And they both had 10. And Justin Herbert has 2 more than they do. It is insane. When you look and when you really break down what Justin Herbert was doing against coverage that the Eagles were bringing, because again, they tried to mirror a little bit of what the Ravens and the Patriots are doing, trying to mix it up a little bit. Herbert definitely seemed a lot more in sync with his receivers this time around. As you mentioned, Dan, the offensive line did a much better job in giving him protection this time. The drops that have haunted this offense were not there as they have been the last 2 games. This was a redemption game, certainly for Keenan Allen. 12 catches for him, over 100 yards. He even said in the post-game interview with Chris Harry that he didn't like the drops that he's had those last 2 games, and he made note of it to correct that. But I think just the way that the offense worked as a whole, certain things, we're going to get into it. When it came to the run game, certain plays that were being called, especially on 4th and Staley, there were a lot of warranted criticisms for that. But I think one of the other things that I noticed as far as offense goes, tight ends have a day. Holy crap.
Yes.
Talk about how they were featured. You go back to, what was it, Dan? I believe it was it the Raider game where it was all tight ends and no longer wide receivers, where Cook, Parham, and Anderson all had a day? I think that was the game, if I'm right, where it was their day. This felt to me a lot like that. Jared Cook, Donald Parham, and especially Steven Anderson was contributing big time in this game. A lot of creative plays that they had for them, especially around the goal line. And you saw increased snap counts for both Josh Palmer and for Jalen Guyton. Nothing big, but I like the increase in snap counts, and hopefully Justin Herbert is going to be looking their direction more often. So as a whole, for the offense, in terms of the passing game goes, and Justin Herbert especially, this was a bounce-back game for them, and it looked more like the team that we have seen weeks prior.
Talk about the tight ends, man. Jake, 11 targets to the tight ends across those 3. 11 targets, 11 receptions, $126, and 2 touchdowns. I will take that production from my tight end group every day of the week. And you saw, it wasn't just little plays. Like, you saw 20-yard catches from, I believe, all of them. So, tight ends, I think, was one of my favorite parts of this game. And there were a couple times you saw 3 tight end sets at the goal line where Steven Anderson lined up as fullback. And I was like, oh, give me this all day long. Steven Anderson.
It was a fantastic play. It was 2 of those plays for his. The first drive that ended up stalling in the red zone when he brought it down to the 3. It was a great... It was almost essentially the same formation that they had him coming out of the fullback position. Instead, this time he runs left and takes it all the way down to the 3 after the catch and run. And then eventually when they get down to the end zone on a drive later in the game, they had him come up from the same position. This time he goes right. Everybody bites on all the receivers. Anderson just sneaks through. Nobody's in coverage on him, and it's an easy touchdown. I mean, I love the fact that this team kept Steven Anderson, and for the fact that he has grown into this role, not as just a 4th tight end, but essentially he's putting Gabe Neighbors just out to pasture right now as far as his role goes on this offense.
I will obviously talk about Justin Herbert here in a sec, but the thing I liked most about what we did with tight ends was they were everywhere. Like what we do with Steven Anderson, for example. You saw Steven Anderson slip underneath and then go back and watch that chunk play to Mike Williams for like 50-something yards. Steven Anderson does the exact same play where he slips out and then he's supposed to end up blocking. Doesn't end up blocking very well, but still, same play that went for the touchdown ends up being expanded out, 60-yard, 50-yard, whatever it was, catch to Mike Williams. Donald Parham getting, let's talk about the mismatch. 6'9" versus 6 foot Darius Slay, stiff arms, walk-in touchdown, like it was easy. Jared Cook's getting touchdowns, getting field goal, 2-point conversions. Say what you will, this tight end group is a problem for folks. And you mentioned it. Keenan Allen had a redemption day for sure. 12 receptions, over 100 yards. One ball at the very beginning of the game from Justin Herbert went through his hands, but it was like on a rope, a little high. He technically probably still could have gotten it, but still. But let's talk about the man of the hour. What more can you say about this Justin Herbert kid, huh? Sophomore slump my ass. Like 84% completion percentage? What? I think at one point he had 11 straight completions, and the kid was just dealing. There was not a single pass that was even remotely close to being intercepted. Like, not even close. The only one that was possibly one that you could take back was the one to Mike Williams. He still caught it for 50 yards. Justin Herbert arguably had the best day of his 2021 career so far, which is saying something because he's had some good days. This was the most efficient I have seen him in quite some time. Amazing bounce back game for him. And last thing I'm going to say in terms of biggest takeaways, can we all please shut up about offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi? Jake, we didn't punt once. Not once. And the 2 fourth down calls, which we'll get to in a sec, on the things that possibly could have gone wrong, that did go wrong, I liked both of them. I liked both times that they called for the play. I liked both times to go for it. The only thing I didn't like was personnel on one. But still, every single 4th down that we went for, I 100% agreed with. And arguably, we should have gotten all of them. But still, Joe Lombardi had that offense humming. There was on the last drive, that 6 minutes drive for the Chargers to go down and kick the game-winning field goal. There was I want to say it was a run pass, RPO, to Steven Anderson for like 15 yards on 2nd and 16, I believe, or 1st and 15. Arguably the best play call of the day. I think everyone thought we were going to be running a draw play there. Joe Lombardi was in his bag yesterday, and I think deserves a lot of credit for what we saw on this tape. And look, we can nitpick a few things here and there, but when your quarterback is throwing 84% completion percentage and your offense doesn't punt, you go 97 yards in your first possession, like, you're doing something right. So kudos, credit where credit is due. Joe Lombardi had a day. And look, man, don't look now. Chargers are 5-3, top the AFC West, like you said.
Yes, the efficiency here, Daiyan, in terms of offense was very impressive. And I love it. It's just, Keenan Allen isn't able to cross the plane for the end zone. The ball, and obviously the Chargers end up turning it over to the Eagles. It's Joe Lombardi's fault. It is, I definitely believe, the personnel on the 4th and short play, where if your whole mantra is to put the ball in your best player's hands, why in the hell is Josh Kelly taking a 4th down run? I don't get that one iota. That is one of the biggest criticisms, and I think justifiably so, that everybody has with this right now. But talk about efficiency, Dan. Check this out for the offensive drives for the Chargers. Whether they got stalled or they scored, 15 plays, 6 plays, 7 plays, 9 plays, 4 plays, 10 plays, 15 plays. That's pretty damn good. That's pretty damn efficient. And as like you mentioned, the Chargers did not punt one time. And those last drives that I said, even though the low numbers, 4 plays, 66 yards in a minute 56, and the Chargers put 7 on the board on that. 9 plays, 57 yards. They got a field goal out of that. 15 plays, 64 yards. This was the backbreaker at the end of the game. 6 minutes and 5 seconds. Technically 6 minutes and 7 seconds, considering that they left 2 seconds on the clock. But that, as you said, Dan, that was like the drive at the end of the Washington game where you think to yourself, the way that this game has gone, every time that the Chargers have put one in the end zone, the Eagles have been able to come back and score another one. This time, we just decided, you know what? We're not going to give the ball back to you this time. And we're just going to drive it down your throat and make this just a slow and painful death for you at the end of the game. And the Chargers won the game off of their field goal kicker?
What?
Am I reading?
Before we get to the special teams, because we're going to be talking a lot about special teams, we got a lot to talk about with this defense.
Set your recording devices, because this is going to be a rare time that happens.
In a positive light, anyway, that's for sure.
Yes, in a positive light.
Jake, we had quite the number of Chargers Unleashed hotline voicemails. So I say we get going on those. Let's get 2 of those going now. Again, for folks who have not called in or are not familiar or have not tuned in before, Chargers Unleashed hotline, 323-374-5651. Leave a voicemail with us, and we will go ahead and play your voicemail, and you'll get Jake's instant live reaction for the first time. All right, Jake. So, again, like I mentioned, got 6 voicemails. Let's hear what folks had to say about this game. Someone from the 570 area code called in. Let's hear what they had to say.
So this game was a really tough game. This was kind of surprising, too, because it was probably the best game the offensive line had. I mean, even Storm Norton and Michael Schofield, they played pretty well all game. And the Eagles' pass rush really never got home to Justin Herbert like I thought they would. I think, obviously, the run defense, we can talk about that all day. We know what it is. It's not great, but it has to be just good enough. The real concern this game was the secondary, how guys were holding up. Everybody was hurt, and the guys who were healthy, they were just struggling. Jalen Hurts made a lot of surprisingly good throws, but this was just a big win. It was a must-have win. The Chargers needed it, and they got it. And I also want to say the last 2 things is credit to Andre Roberts, huge on special teams that game. And then Joe Lombardi's play calling was much better. I felt like the Chargers had more intent on a lot of their plays and had less of the bad plays that we've come to know for the first 7 weeks. So bolt up, it was a big win.
That's a lot of points there, Jake.
I'm trying to figure out which one I want to start with. Let's get the special teams one out of the way, because that was an obvious one. When I'm watching that, especially Andre Roberts' last return, I think it was of 39 yards, if I'm right, Dan. Again, I got my neighbor who's a Philly fan that's sitting right there. It's like, I think that is the longest return that I have seen the Chargers make in the last 7 years. And it may be longer, and I couldn't remember it. But holy crap, look what happens when special teams actually ends up contributing positively to your offensive drives. I mean, this was a great day for Andre Roberts. This is, I think, what we were expecting the juice to him that he was supposed to bring last week. But again, you're going up against Bill Belichick, who's historically had one of the best special teams unit for the better part of 20 years. But this is what you wanted to see from your return game. This was the big reason why you waived KJ Hill, brought him to the practice squad, and you brought in Andre Roberts as your primary kickoff and punt returner. This was great in terms of making things easier for the offense to not have them start drives from inside their 10 or inside their 20 and drive 80, 90. The Chargers even had to do it at one point in this game, even though it yielded no points, but you drove 97 yards. It's amazing the fact that they still ended up doing it, albeit they yielded no points off of that drive. But damn, you don't want to have to see them doing that every single time. So credit to Andre Roberts for injecting some adrenaline into this return game that the Chargers desperately needed. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. The Chargers came into this game severely shorthanded in the secondary. Mike Davis, Asante Samuel Jr., Alohi Gilman, all of whom were out. There was a rotation of Ryan Smith, Tavon Campbell, Kamen Hall. I know I'm probably forgetting one individual as far as who was brought in. Obviously, Chris Harris. who had one of the more forgetful days of his career because Devontae Smith made him look pretty bad on a number of different occasions that he ended up catching the ball. And the Eagles caught on to it very fast, and they picked on Chris Harris all afternoon. It wasn't pretty. But again, when you think of everything that the Chargers had as far as their deficiencies, lack of personnel in the secondary, other than Devontae Smith, the Eagles wide receivers were not really able to do much. Again, that goes to Jalen Hurts being able to run the ball himself, the success that the Eagles were having in the run game. I think they ended up having 172 yards total rushing. They had 115 by halftime. But, these are some of the games that you have these type of games and you find ways to win despite the injury bug. So we're not sitting here on a Monday talking about, the Chargers didn't have this guy or that guy and this guy, and it probably would have been a much different outcome. Screw that. You found a way to win regardless of the fact.
Period. You found a way to win.
Right. It wasn't pretty, but you found a way to get it done.
I'm a little... First off, thank you so much for calling. I'm a little on the fence about kind of this idea that Chris Harris Jr. had a bad day. Now, did he get exposed on a few plays? Sure. I believe he gave up 4 catches for 80 yards on the day. But Jake, as a team, the Eagles had, I want to say, 155 yards passing. Granted, Jalen Hurts missed a wide open Goddard that would have been a touchdown. I believe that was actually on Chris Harris as well. 150 yards. The Chargers had 200 more passing yards than they did. So as much as we want to sit here and complain about the fact that Chris Harris Jr. had a horrible day, could he have had a much better? Yes. Were there some bad plays? Sure. But look who the Chargers had in their secondary. They literally had their 3rd, 4th, and 5th string corner going.
Dan, let me just say this. I think the Chargers were very fortunate who they were playing against at quarterback. And this is not a knock. This is not a knock on Jalen Hurts because I think he can develop into a very good quarterback. If he fixes some of his aspects with his reads and more importantly, his accuracy, Dan, he had that one in the drive that could have been an easy 6 if he just puts it in Dallas Goedert's hands instead of overthrowing him just a bit. If he fixes some of his accuracy issues and was a more comfortable passer at this point in his career, the Chargers probably lose this game because you probably are able to be more multiple with your offensive calls. The run game was obviously working. You'd been able to set up the pass a lot better other than Devontae Smith having a big day. And I think the Eagles probably would have been more efficient with a better quarterback at the helm yesterday. For them, fortunately, that wasn't the case. So, I think that they were fortunate enough that with the injuries they had in the secondary that they were able to get out of there because you couldn't use Derwin James close to the line of scrimmage. You had to have him back there basically as a safety blanket that entire game. Same with Nasir Adderley. You had to keep them back of the backfield. They were not able to get up at the line of scrimmage. You were not able to get them at the line of scrimmage. You're not able to bring them on any type of blitz packages because you couldn't risk it. You couldn't.
Nope, I agree. All right, next one. This is a quick one. We'll see. This is a 12-second voicemail. We'll see what this one has to say from the 806 area code.
12 seconds.
What's up? It's Grant Moore from Texas. I forgive Hopkins for the missed extra point. Go ahead and build the statue. Put Herbert back in the MVP discussion. Good day, sirs.
Okay, so Jake,
sirs.
Hopkins is redeemed. He has a statue built for him. Justin Herbert's MVP. Good day.
Simple enough. Hey, look. Other than a missed PAT, there's nothing that you can knock on Dustin Hopkins, and that's 2 games in a row now. Other than this one PAT, he has been absolutely flawless. So if the foundation of his statue is currently going up in front of SoFi Stadium right now, so be it. Because as of now, for as long as the Chargers have been in that stadium, he has been the best kicker that has been part of this team for this season thus far, since they have been in that stadium. And Justin Herbert in the MVP race, I'm not quite ready to say that. I think it's a hard mountain to climb if you're going to get over guys like Lamar Jackson or even a Kyler Murray, even though he didn't play.
Probably.
But it's that mountain just seems impossibly high for how people would value him. I love the idea of it. Trust me. I understand that without him, I don't even want to fathom what this team's record would be. And I get that. But let's pump the brakes just a little bit.
All right. So before we go any further, Jake, our good friends over at MyBookie have been gracious enough to be supporting us. Why don't you tell the people what they can do with MyBookie these days?
Well, Dan, as we inch closer to the NFL playoffs, there are some pivotal games to be on the lookout for this weekend. Of course, the Chargers take on the visiting Minnesota Vikings, hoping to keep the win streak alive, get to 6-3, but they have a tall task ahead of them. We know what their run defense, Dalvin Cook's coming to town. The Minnesota Vikings are coming to prove something, so it is not going to be an easy game by any means. But the Chargers are going to look to continue rolling as they take on the Minnesota Vikings. Don't wait, head to MyBookie today to redeem your double-digit deposit bonus so you can get in on the game and start winning now. Use the promo code LAFB to receive double your first deposit instantly. That's promo code LAFB so you can double your funds to double your winnings. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
Jake, so look, we talked about a lot of good things about this game. Let's get into some of the bad real quick. So I think the dead horse here that can be beaten is the interior defensive line and our rush defense, which I know we're going to get to. One of the things that really drove me nuts about this game, Jake, was the lack of containment on a one Jalen Hurts. It seemed like
surprise you though? Does it surprise
honestly it did surprise me given
I can't wait to hear this.
Given the coach and given the personnel that we had. And there were a couple times where we were darn close, but it just didn't work. It's kind of a tale of two things because I loved the pressure that the Chargers brought on that last defensive series versus the Eagles. The Eagles ended up getting a touchdown. But if you go back and watch that series, they brought pressure multiple times. The problem was defensive ends crashed inside and broke containment or allowed Jalen Hurts to break containment. You can't do that. If you're going to bring pressure, you have to stay outside and bring pressure from the inside. You have to. We were so close on a few of them. But allowing him to scramble outside, I want to say he had 5 first downs via the run. You cannot...
Yeah, what was it? Just over 60 yards rushing himself.
You cannot do that against a quarterback who is not an accurate passer. You would rather have him sit back there for 20 seconds than scramble away. That was, I think, one of the things that drove me nuts the most was, once again, just like the Patriots game, their offense didn't really do anything. Yet, they were still in this game because of untimely mental breakdowns. And some of it was Joey Bosa, where he's crashing inside unnecessarily. And so that irked me. And I guarantee you, Staley and company are going to go back and look at that last drive. They're going to give props to the pressure, but they're going to knock the ability to break containment. That was not okay, in my opinion, especially to an offense who is that one-dimensional. They're not passing it. At one point, I think they ran 9 out of 10 straight times. It was what are you doing?
It's funny if you go back and you look at how the Eagles started this season. And again, sitting with a Philly fan watching this game, and even just, watching their games on primetime that they've had thus far this season, those first couple weeks of the season, they were not running the ball at all. And then all of a sudden, Nick Sirianni decides to wake up and utilize his rushing attack a little bit more. Dan, in short, for this conversation, you're talking about the containment aspects. Look, I am not surprised one bit, regardless of the lack of personnel that the Chargers had on this team. Dan, historically, and we can go back 3 head coaches in all of this, the Chargers are horrible against containing mobile quarterbacks. And when you have one that is dynamic as and athletically has the athletic ability that Jalen Hurts has, it doesn't surprise me at all. It does not surprise me at all. Like I said, if Jalen Hurts was a more accurate downfield passer and was able to connect on some of them that he had an opportunity to do so, we could be sitting here today talking about a Chargers loss. Because if those same things happen, he still ends up having his 60 yards rushing. Obviously, the run game getting off the way it did throughout the entirety of the game, over 170 yards rushing. Jalen Hurts could have picked his spot and looked elsewhere. And the Chargers, especially with their secondary deficiencies, they probably would have bitten.
Spring it on with 40 to 70% off almost everything at Gap Factory and GapFactory.com. Matching styles for the family are on sale too. Shop it all through April 12th.
And it could have been worse. So it does not surprise me in this circumstance. It's much like, Dan, what the announcers were saying during the Baltimore game. When the running game was working so well for them, and then all of a sudden the drives would come up on Baltimore, and Lamar Jackson would go back and he's throwing it on 2nd and 10 and throwing it on 3rd 10, and all of a sudden they're punting, and they're like, what the hell are they doing? Why? The running game was working so well. So it doesn't surprise me at all. I think Nick Sirianni had that idea in his mind that they were going to use this run-heavy offense for Jalen, have an RPO option if it's there. Take the shot. If it's not there, obviously use his legs to convert the first down. So it doesn't surprise me from the standpoint of the Eagles game plan, and nor so does it surprise me from the standpoint that the Chargers weren't able to stop it because, Dan, historically, they have never been able to.
Now, I will say, I like Jalen Hurts. Like, I think he's got it. Like, I think give him some mechanics and some ways to fix that. Give him a couple off seasons to kind of work on some of his accuracy stuff. Like, he's a gamer. I think Philadelphia has their starting quarterback there. Granted, they also have 3 first-round picks coming up in the next draft, so they got some options ahead of them. Jake, let's get back to the Chargers Unleashed voicemail from the Chargers Unleashed hotline, 323-374-5651. Again, this is an adult show, not for the faint of heart. Apologies for
yes,
the things that are coming. But look, guys and gals, we were in our feelings from this game. Chargers fans have been dying for a victory, and they got it. Let's hear what the voicemail has to say from the 804 area code.
Let's fucking go. Motherfucking Justin Herbert for the motherfucking MVP, baby. This is how we going. Hey, this Quentin Johnston calling from Petersburg, Virginia. I know it's a little weird. East Coast fans, we doing it out here too, goddammit. Hey, that was a nail biter. We pulled it out in the end. Thank God for a kicker, because we've been looking real shitty the last few weeks. Excuse my language. But Lord Jesus, thank you, Jesus, for a kicker. That's the wife in the background. Let's go, both. Both up. You know it. Both gang or don't bang. We got.
Oh my God. Again, Dan, this is why I love doing this show. It's for moments like these right here. I love it. First off, I cannot believe that. First off, calling from Virginia, just like his message kind of alluded to. It's like, I know Virginia, you wouldn't think that there'd be any Charger fans in Virginia. I'm just as surprised as you are, Dan, probably to get that message. But damn it, yes. Everything that was said there was absolutely true. It was a nail biter. Thank God we had it. Thank God Dustin Hopkins right now is making all of his kicks to win this game. Justin Herbert got back to being Justin Herbert in this game. Bolt gang or don't bang, baby.
Boom!
Let's go.
Shout out to Quentin. And was it St. Petersburg, I believe, or Petersburg, Virginia?
Virginia.
Oof. Man, and then the wifey in the background getting hyped. Let's go. That's what this is all about. It's not just the fellas here. We've got wives, we've got kids screaming in the background. Like, people are amped for this team, for these games. And Jake, talking about having a kicker, finally. What were you feeling? I know how we have felt historically when we see a kicker go out there to kick, regardless of where they're kicking. How were you feeling about that kick before it went up? Like, did you feel confident? Did you feel like, here we go, he's going to miss it? Like what were you feeling more or less confident or the same as you were weeks prior?
You know what was hilarious, Dan? Let me go to a few plays before the kick is actually done. As we're driving down the field, we're in good field goal range at this point, but in my heart, I'm thinking, dude, get it up to the 5. I don't care. Don't just settle for a 20-yard field goal. Like, please.
Or a 45-yard field goal.
It is going to take a lot of consistency to get over the demons of having 11 kickers since 2017.
Fair.
For every missed field goal PAT, it's going to take a long time. And that feeling is not going to go away for a while. But so there were two things that happened. So I think it was the last timeout that the Chargers ended up taking. I think it was a run right. Eckler, I think he ended up losing. Either was no gain or 2 yards that he lost on it. It was still in bounds. We had to take our final timeout. The last play that happens before the field goal ends up happening. Again, the Chargers have no timeouts at this point. Eckler's able to bust one up the middle, get a nice chunk of yardage back, and he gets tackled. And then all of a sudden it just gets up like fist pumping. I'm looking at the TV like, get to the line, you idiots. You still have to spike this ball. Like, they're looking like, yeah, we just made a great play. Like, the game's not over yet, dude. Like, get up on the ball and spike it and stop the clock. I think my heart was pounding more at that moment right there. I'm like, that would have just been the most Chargers thing to do, that everybody forgot that there was no timeouts left. And God forbid if they let that clock run down before they were able to get the field goal off. But yeah, Dan, like I said, it doesn't matter if it's from the 6, the 36, the 56. This feeling of anxiety and the thought process of the Chargers missing one, especially in a critical moment like that, that's not going to go away anytime soon.
I will say, the part that got me the most anxious about that drive at the end of the game, I mean, aside from the fact that Austin Eckler absolutely got the first down, there's no reason why that was a 4th down run that they had to call, where he jumped over the line. Horrible spot. No way he did not get that first down. Fast forward, I want to say Chargers were in field goal range. It's about a somewhere between 40 and 50-yard field goal at this point. Chargers, I think they go to Keenan Allen, short of the sticks. It's like 4th and 2. Chargers go up there and looking as if they're trying to get the Eagles to jump off sides, and then get to the very end of the play clock, call timeout. As much as I was confident that, true to Brandon Staley's form, he would have gone for it on 4th down, there was like the devil and the angel. There was like that moment where I'm hoping like, oh, hell no. Like, please tell me you are not settling for a 48-yard field goal right now. Like, I would rather go for it on 4th and 2 or 4th and 1 than go for a 48-yard field goal. Don't do this to me with 3 minutes left. That was when I got the most stressed out. Once we got that first down, I was kind of like, okay, I feel better. But when we actually kicked it, Jake, I literally looked to my wife. I said, I can't watch this. I put my head in my hands, and then the blanket, and then I just listened for my wife. And then game over. We win. I should have game over. There's 2 seconds left. You're right. It's going to take a lot to negate those negative feelings and experiences that we've had from the special teams. But look, give them credit. They did what they needed to do. And they went down 6+ minute drive for the win when they had to have it. Thank you, baby Jesus. Moving on, Jake. 951 area code. Leaving us a voicemail. I think they're happy about the win, but there may be some other feelings as well. Let's hear what they have to say.
hey, I'm happy about the win today. Very excited about it. However, I do think, obviously, our defense needs some work. Not just the run defense, which I know a lot of people say, but I also think that the defense all around is hurting a little bit. But my main takeaway, not just from this game, is just it looks like they don't have heart. They don't have that fight in them. They just lack that. And I think if we are going to be postseason contenders, they need to have more fire. So that's my take. Hopefully they get it. Hopefully we can do something in the postseason this year. Thanks.
Well done. Call it like you see it. Called out. Bring in the hot takes. Jake. Well, first off, thank you so much for calling. Chargers don't have heart. They don't have the fight in them. Do you agree? On defense, specifically.
This is a very interesting comment. I'm going to say yesterday was a microcosm of the personnel that was on the field. And obviously the Chargers were dealing with their injuries in the secondary, and I'm not taking away any excuses of anything. But in defense of her comments, and Dan, as we have said many times on this show before, the Chargers are not stacked with 11 spots on defense to post Derwin James's and Joey Bosa's. And if you were to point out one other defender that probably had a big-time contributing day yesterday was Linval Joseph, but that's probably the only one that you can say. Dan, we have been waiting for that opposite edge rusher to show something consistently to where Joey Bosa is not doubled and triple teamed on a weekly basis. The only time he got free that he got to Jalen Hurts it was literally when nobody touched him. I don't know why anybody had no bodies on Joey Bosa on that play. But, Kyler Fackrell has had his moments. Uchenna Nwosu got his first sack a couple weeks ago. You've had some flashes here and there, but there's nothing consistent coming from the edge rush. Jerry Tillery had one flash yesterday when it came to negating a run play. He still has not molded into the first-round interior defensive lineman that we thought he was going to. So it's a number of things. Do I think that this team has heart? Yes. When it comes to personnel, we're talking about a completely different story. And I'm not going to lie, Dan, but the very beginning of that call really just wanted me to go off on a draft mode tangent. And I know I'm still months ahead of myself. But damn it, if we want to start bringing up names like Jordan Davis, Perry, and Winfrey for the interior defensive line, I'm all for that.
Let's go.
But I'll go ahead and, to Dan's side, he'll still tell me it's too early in time to start doing that right now. But I will say this. When the playoffs come, if the Chargers ultimately end up making the playoffs, you better damn sure be hoping that you see a much better product defensively than what you've seen from this team. I don't know how you're going to fix the interior of the run defense. I do not believe that's going back until 2022. I've said that numerous times. But give me some creativity on defense on how you're going to be putting your best players in a position to create negative plays, to create turnovers. Show me something that's different, because I get it with the personnel this week, you were handcuffed. You really couldn't do that much. But moving forward, still got a lot of games to go. I need to see something different that's going to be able to knock an offense off their snide and not be able to be so predictive on how to beat this defense of ours.
Honestly, I'm very happy that this caller gave us this topic, because I want to say I saw a former Charger tweet something about stopping the run is a mindset. And
that was Merriman that said that.
Was it? Okay. So how much of this is personnel versus how much of this is that they're just not showing heart? If it's a mindset thing, Christian Covington, Linval Joseph, Jerry Tillery, Chris Rumpf, Uchenna Nwosu, Kyler Fackrell, Kaiser White, Joey Bosa, that's enough. Like, is it great? Like, is that a top defensive line from a rushing perspective? No, but like, is it okay? 100%. Like, I don't get how this is happening. And you go and watch some of the plays, Jake, on replay. People are getting washed away. Folks, aside from Linval Joseph, because he had a great game. Folks are getting blindsided and are getting completely taken out of the play numerous times. And that's not okay. Like, at some point, you got to man up and either add more guys to the line, which I think you saw the Chargers do at the end of the fourth quarter, where he broke containment, or pony up. Like, you've got dudes. There's no reason that you should be last in the NFL in rush defense. No excuse for that. And sure, we can say they were handcuffed. Jake, they weren't handcuffed on the defensive line. Arguably, this is the most healthy their defensive line has been all season. Justin Jones is back. So
Damn.
I don't know. Like, I want to give these guys the benefit of the doubt. And look, like, there are things that they're trying to work out. They're trying to fix numerous things at the same time. But at some point, like, they gotta fix that. And they can't just look around at other people. Like, look in the mirror sometimes. And sure, like, I'm sure there are things that Brandon Staley and team and coaching staff are looking at. Like, there's a reason for it. But at some point, you have to decide, this is a trend, and I will do everything to stop this. I don't think it's a hard thing. But
Number one, I think Brandon Staley, from his comments in the bye week, said that he recognized that it was bad, and he took that upon himself. Has it been fixed yet? Not even close. Like I said, Dan, it's not getting fixed. Guys, until you play the Jets to the point where they're going to have to throw the ball because of the lead. Dan, okay, if you want, Dan, here you go. Right now, I'm going to give you an absolute 100% solution to fix the run defense. The Chargers need to get up 21 or 28 points on their opponent, much like you did against the Raiders, to where you got out to a soft, comfortable lead, to where they could not put running the ball as a priority at that point in the game. That's how you fix it. But that is the only way that you are going to fix it this year. Dan, it's not getting fixed. And no, I will not stand here and say that it is a lack of heart from these players, because I truly believe that they are playing hard. But from a personnel standpoint, Dan, yes, I've been saying it since July. The interior depth of this defensive line, I've been worried about for months, since training camp. God, did you see Justin Simmons, or is Jeffrey Simmons, the interior defensive line on the Tennessee Titans, the havoc that he wreaked? I mean, that's like Aaron Donald light. And he was a stud coming out of Mississippi State. And when you go back and you look at this is going to have to be a priority for this team, not just in free agency, but in the draft as well. You're going to have to double dip to bring in reinforcements here. And this has definitely been a position that, you know, if I'm going to hammer Tom Telesco on one thing, it will be this, because I definitely think that he has negated putting depth or key pieces around this particular position when it comes to the NFL draft, albeit, hey, I know he had a million other priorities, especially on the offensive line, that he had to take care of first. But still, there has not been a lot of priority put at the interior defensive line. And right now, it's showing.
That's
and it's looking really bad.
Yep. But look, hey, I know we're in a kind of a low energy perspective, or at least negativity perspective, but damn it, the Chargers won. Like, we're nitpicking right now. The Chargers' rush defense is not good, and it's going to rear its ugly head, and it's going to cost us either in the playoffs or in the future game in the regular season. It's going to cost them if they don't get it fixed. Like, we all have to accept that. It's not okay, but it's going to happen. Now, should we expect this Chargers team to win Super Bowl this year? Like, that's a little bit of a stretch. And
the answer is no. Don't say it's a stretch. Just say it's a no, and be honest.
But let's temper expectations a bit. But we can ask for this defensive line to do better. I think that's fair. All right, Jake. Next voicemail. Kalen called in. Let's see what Kalen from Montana has to say about this Chargers team.
Yellowstone?
Hey, boys, this is Kalen out of Montana again. Cancel that first one. That was terrible. Anyway, both up, boys. Just glad to see the boys getting the win call again. The O-line held their own, which is great to see. Defense still has their issues, but it is what it is. Just try and hold back the bleeding. Good to see them get a win. Kicker showed up. Justin Herbert's back to his old ways, which is great to see. I don't know if it was because the offensive line wasn't holding their own and just didn't have time to push the ball down the field, or maybe he got injury to his hand, but he looked like his old self. Anyway, both up, boys. Let's go Minnesota.
There's the optimism. Thank you so much to Kalen out of Montana. Shout out Yellowstone.
Yellowstone Ranch, baby. A bigger reason of why Justin Herbert looked as good as he did is because he wasn't getting his pressure nearly as often as he had been the past 2 weeks. Had time, the offensive line did very, very well. You talk about going, I think there was a stat, Dan, that compared the three, if you went from left tackle to center, the left tackle, left guard, and the center that the Chargers had last year, I think in total gave up 120 pressures, just those three alone, which is scary enough. And I think this was Alex that ended up tweeting this out. It was a great stat. And he said that right now, when you look at the combination of Rashawn Slater, Matthew Filer, and Corey Linsley, they're on pace to only give up 60 pressures this year. That's on pace. That's not what they've given up so far. They're on pace to give up that. I mean, talk about what reinforcements to an offensive line does, especially for a franchise quarterback. And this time, thankfully enough, the right side of your line did not end up being a hindrance to your offense screwing up the way that it had been the last 2 weeks. I thought that Storm Norton arguably played one of his best games as a Charger yesterday. I record that. I don't feel like I will be saying that sentence a lot. I hope I do, but if I don't, this is one of those rare occurrences. And look what happens. Justin Herbert ends up having a much needed rebound game, one of the most efficient games that he's had since he's been in the league. And these are the results. This is what happens. You can do this week in, week out if this offensive line continues to give your franchise quarterback protection like this.
I mean, it's amazing year over year, the difference. And it's kind of, I was thinking about this when you were talking about the special teams a little bit earlier, but turning a weakness into a strength. Looking at kind of the Chargers' offensive line woes of the past, one offseason, one draft, now that has turned into a strength, at least for 2/3 of the line. Special teams has been a huge weakness. And you look at Andre Roberts and Dustin Hopkins, and seemingly it's a strength, at least for 1 week. It's so important to be able to kind of have that self-reflective moment of knowing what you're bad at and then making that a strength. The Chargers can easily go into the draft this year and look at their major weaknesses. They gotta shore up the trenches on the defensive line, on the right side of the line. They probably can get some help at running back. They probably get some help at linebacker, safety, but the main things is the trenches. You got your pieces. I mean, it's exciting. It's exciting, but the job's not done. And it's unfortunate that Oday Aboushi is out for the year. It's unfortunate that we just found out Ryan Smith is out with a torn ACL. He's gone. Special teams is going to take a hit with that. But look, it's a game of attrition, and it's a next man up. You hear people talk about it all the time, and that's where the importance of coaching and coaching folks up comes into play. And that's why I'm very happy we have Brandon Staley, because I think he does that better than most. At least he has done so so far in his tenure. Last one, Jake. Voicemail from the 858, friend of the show. I think you may recognize this fella. Friend of the show's from Charger Chat podcast. Kevin has called into the show. Let's hear what Kevin has to say.
What's up, boys? This is Kevin from Charger Chat. Just wanted to call you guys, tell you guys do awesome work. Appreciate everything you guys do for all the Charger community. My question is, for your week, what do you guys do? Are we going to grocery stores, putting away carts? Are we ordering extra brisket? What are you guys doing on this victory week? All right, boys. Keep it up. Talk to you later. Bye.
Love this one.
First of all, let me just highlight Kevin Duggan from Chargers Chat Pod because he is fantastic. I have been on his show a couple times now with he and the guys, and he's always told me, prior to us doing our interviews, that he always will throw what he calls it like the idiot question, as it was what he throws in at the end of his questions, just like the goofy, random, off the wall question. And this is no surprise to me because this is what this is. This is what it reminds me of from our conversation. So he asked basically, what was the question again, Dan? What do we do during the week when we're not doing this? Is that essentially what he's asking?
I think he's asking, what are we doing to celebrate after a win?
What are we doing to celebrate? Okay,
I believe brisket, putting shopping carts away.
I was fortunate enough last night. This was all due to the timing. Season 4 of Yellowstone started last night. My in-laws, as well as my parents, religiously watched the show. So we were, of course, very much looking forward to Yellowstone season 4. So the timing was just right. You get a Chargers win, game's over at 4:00. I run home, and I've got about 10 slabs of chicken that have been marinating in mango marinade for the past 24 hours to fire that up on the barbecue. We did that with one of my wife's actually signature salads that she does with spinach, raspberries, and she has, I believe, if I'm correct, it is a poppy seed dressing that she does, if I remember that correctly. And then, of course, my mom brings like 6 vegetable and fruit platters and peanuts and whatnot. So it was a great night. It was a perfect timing. That was a great meal to celebrate on.
Attaboy. I went and had barbecue to celebrate as well. I went to Phil's Barbecue. Shout out to them. Incredible. Yeah, and also, by the way, who doesn't put shopping carts away? Like, it's not that hard. Jake?
I mean, not all the time. I know that this is going to piss Kevin off because I know that he's put up his videos.
Yep.
Basically saying what would Justin Herbert do. So I will admit I am not flawless when it comes to putting away shopping carts.
Okay, well then I'll call you out here, Jake. What does Jake Hefner do?
When it comes to the shopping carts?
Yeah.
You know what? Here's the thing. I will look first to see where the shopping cart docket thing is. If it's more than 100 feet away,
what do you do?
I kind of like look around first to see if there's any witnesses, and then I put it up on one of those, barriers that has the trees on it, or it's, separating the parking spots. So I'll do that first. If it's less than 100 feet, I will gladly push myself all the way there and then put it into the docket. But sometimes you get the dockets, like you go to Costco on a busy day, the dockets are full. So it's like, what the hell are you supposed to do?
Okay, but do you, I only say this because I know I do. Do you still sometimes ride the cart on the way back?
Oh, it's 100%. I do that. Who doesn't want to, I mean, come on. I'm 36 years old. I have to relive some part of my childhood.
Thank you. Yes. Kevin, thank you so much for calling into Chargers Unleashed Hotline. Friend of the show, you're the best, man. Love what you guys do over at Charger Chat. If you haven't listened or seen them, go check them out. They're awesome. Jake, I think that's going to do it. Look, we talked about all of the positives. We talked about Justin Herbert. We talked about Austin Eckler. We talked about Keenan Allen. We talked about this coaching staff, offensive play calling. We talked about the bad. We talked about interior defensive line. We talked about kind of the Chris Harris stuff. We talked about what we need to do getting better. And obviously, we talked about all of the hotline voicemails and reactions from Jake. Jake, anything else you want to tell the good people before we sign off until our next episode?
Dan, it always feels good to come on here on a Victory Monday, despite what you may think about my pessimistic thought process as it relates to this team and the history of this show.
Podcast.
But I will say this: when it's a win like that, when that is a win that historically the Chargers lose 9 times out of 10, this was the 10th, and we've had a couple games like this to where you're finding different ways to win. And on this day, it was on the foot of your kicker. On the other days, it's been from a fourth quarter comeback. On other days, it's been from a defense making a stop. It's just, hey, if you can find ways to win like this, ugly or not, as you said, Dan, it's hard to win in the NFL. So at the end of the day, is it pretty? Not always. Is it flawless? Hell no, it's not flawless. But it's a W in the win column, and that's all that matters. On to the Vikings.
Chargers beat the Eagles 27-24, improved to 5-3, atop the AFC West, ahead the Minnesota Vikings come to town to SoFi. Jake, I will be at the game with a few friends and family. Cannot wait for that one. Chargers got a big test ahead of them. But right now, Chargers won last week, improved to 5-3. We are all on a high. Enjoy it. And we'll talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed. For Jake Hefner and his backwards hat, you can find him at Jake T. Hefner. Myself at Chargers Homer. Fourth and Staley t-shirts, you can find him at LAFB Network. We're selling them on our website. Go check them out. See him at SoFi. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, evening, or morning. And we'll talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed.